When I told my parents I was gay, the first thing they said to me was, "We're bringing you back to Taiwan." In their minds, my sexual orientation was America's fault. The West had corrupted me with divergent ideas, and if only my parents had never left Taiwan, this would not have happened to their only daughter. In truth, I wondered if they were right. Of course, there are gay people in Asia, just as there are gay people in every part of the world. But is the idea of living an out life, in the "I'm gay, this is my spouse, and we're proud of our lives together" kind of way, just a Western idea? If I had grown up in Taiwan, or any place outside of the West, would I have found models of happy, thriving LGBT people?
I had similar notions. As an HIV social worker in San Francisco, I had met many gay immigrants. They told me their stories of persecution in their home countries just for being gay, and the reasons why they escaped to the US. I saw how this had beaten them down. After 10 years of doing this kind of work, I needed better stories for myself. I knew the world was far from perfect, but surely not every gay story was tragic.
So as a couple, we both had a need to find stories of hope. So we set off on a mission to travel the world and look for the people that we finally termed as the super gays. These would be the LGBT individuals who were doing something extraordinary in the world. They would be courageous, resilient, and most of all, proud of who they were. They would be the kind of person that I aspired to be. Our plan was to share their stories to the world through film.
There was just one problem. We had zero reporting and zero filmmaking experience. We didn't even know where to find the super gays, so we just had to trust that we would figure it all out along the way. So we picked 15 countries in Asia, Africa, and South America. Countries outside the West that varied in terms of LGBT rights. We bought a camcorder, ordered a book on how to make a documentary, and you can learn a lot these days, and set off on a round-the-world trip.
One of the first countries that we traveled to was Nepal. Despite widespread poverty, a decade-long civil war, and now recently a devastating earthquake, Nepal has made significant strides in the fight for equality. One of the key figures in the movement is Bhumika Shrestha. A beautiful, vibrant, transgendered woman, Bhumika has had to overcome being expelled from school and getting incarcerated because of her gender presentation. But in 2007, Bhumika and Nepal's LGBT rights organization successfully petitioned the Nepali Supreme Court to protect against LGBT discrimination. Here's Bhumika.
Most of I'm proud. I'm a transgender people. I'm so proud of my life. So on to the 21st December 2007, the Supreme Court gave the decision for Nepal government to give a transgender identity card and same-sex marriage.
I can appreciate Bhumika's confidence on a daily basis. Something as simple as using a public restroom can be a huge challenge when you don't fit in to people's strict gender expectations. Traveling throughout Asia, I tended to freak out women in public restrooms. They weren't used to seeing someone like me. I had to come up with a strategy so that I could just pee in peace. So anytime I would enter a restroom, I would thrust out my chest to show my womanly parts and try to be as non-threatening as possible, putting out my hands and saying hello, just so that people could hear my feminine voice. This all gets pretty exhausting, but it's just who I am. I can't be anything else.
After Nepal, we traveled to India. On one hand, India is a Hindu society without a tradition of homophobia. On the other hand, it is also a society with a deeply patriarchal system, which rejects anything that threatens the male-female order. When we spoke to activists, they told us that empowerment begins with ensuring proper gender equality, where the woman's status is established in society. And in that way, the status of LGBT people can be affirmed as well.
There we met Prince Manvendra. He's the world's first openly gay prince. Prince Manvendra came out on the Oprah Winfrey Show very internationally. His parents disowned him and accused him of bringing great shame to the royal family. We sat down with Prince Manvendra and talked to him about why he decided to come out so very publicly. Here he is.
I felt that there was a lot of need to break this stigma and discrimination which is existing in our society. And that kind of instigated me to come out openly and talk about myself, whether we are gay, we are lesbian, we are transgender, bisexual, or whatever sexual minority we come from. We have to all unite and fight for our rights. Gay rights cannot be won in the courtrooms, but in the hearts and the minds of the people.
While getting my hair cut, the woman cutting my hair asked me, "Do you have a husband?" Now, this was a dreaded question that I got asked a lot by locals while traveling. When I explained to her that I was with a woman instead of a man, she was incredulous, and she asked me a lot of questions about my parents' reactions and whether I was sad that I'd never be able to have children. I told her that there are no limitations to my life and that Lisa and I do plan to have a family someday. Now, this woman was ready to write me off as yet another crazy Westerner. She couldn't imagine that such a phenomenon could happen in her own country. That is, until I showed her the photos of the super gays we interviewed in India. She recognized Prince Manvendra from television, and soon I had an audience of other hairdressers interested in meeting me. And in that ordinary afternoon, I had the chance to introduce an entire beauty salon to the social changes that were happening in their own country.
From India, we traveled to East Africa, a region known for intolerance towards LGBT people. In Kenya, 89% of people who come out to their families are disowned. Homosexual acts are a crime and can lead to incarceration. In Kenya, we met the soft-spoken David Korea. David had a huge mission of wanting to work for the poor and improve his own government, so he decided to run for Senate. He became Kenya's first openly gay political candidate.
David wanted to run his campaign without denying the reality of who he was. But we were worried for his safety because he started to receive death threats.
At that point, I was really, really scared because they were actually asking for me to be killed. And yeah, there are some people out there who would do it, and they would feel that they're doing a religious obligation.
David wasn't ashamed of who he was. Even in the face of threats, he stayed authentic.
At the opposite end of the spectrum is Argentina. Argentina is a country where 92% of the population identifies as Catholic. Yet, Argentina has LGBT laws that are even more progressive than here in the US. In 2010, Argentina became the first country in Latin America and the 10th in the world to adopt marriage equality. There we met Maria Rashid. Maria was the driving force behind that movement.
Digo que en realidad los efectos del matrimonio igualitario no son solamente para las parejas que se casan, son para un montón de personas que aunque no se casen nunca, van a ser percibidas por los compañeros de trabajo, por la familia, por los vecinos, de otra manera a partir de este mensaje de igualdad del Estado Nacional. Me siento muy orgullosa de Argentina porque Argentina hoy es un modelo de igualdad y ojalá muy pronto tengamos en todo el mundo los mismos derechos con los mismos nombres.
When we made the visit to my ancestral lands, I wish I could have shown my parents what we found there. Because here is who we met.
1, 2, 3. Welcome days to Shanghai!
A whole community of young, beautiful Chinese LGBT people. Sure, they had their struggles, but they were fighting it out. In Shanghai, I had the chance to speak to a local lesbian group and tell them our story in my broken Mandarin Chinese. In Taipei, each time we got onto the metro, we saw yet another lesbian couple holding hands. And we learned that Asia's largest LGBT pride event happens just blocks away from where my grandparents live. If only my parents knew.
By the time we finished our not-so-straight journey around the world, we had traveled 50,000 miles and logged 120 hours of video footage. We traveled to 15 countries and interviewed 50 super gays. Turns out, it wasn't hard to find them at all.
Yes, there are still tragedies that happen in the bumpy road to equality. And let's not forget that 75 countries still criminalize homosexuality today. But there are also stories of hope and courage in every corner of the world. What we ultimately took away from our journey is equality is not a Western invention.
One of the key factors in this equality movement is momentum. Momentum is more and more people embrace their full selves and use whatever opportunities they have to change their part of the world. And momentum as more and more countries find models of equality in one another. When Nepal protected against LGBT discrimination, India pushed harder. When Argentina embraced marriage equality, Uruguay and Brazil followed. When Ireland said yes to equality, the world stopped to notice. When the US Supreme Court makes a statement to the world that we can all be proud of.
As we reviewed our footage, what we realized is that we were watching a love story. It wasn't the love story that was expected of me, but it is one filled with more freedom, adventure, and love than I could have ever possibly imagined. 1 year after returning home from our trip, marriage equality came to California. And in the end, we believe love will win out.
By the power vested in me, by the state of California, and by God Almighty, I now pronounce you spouses for life. You make this.